like going to Nantucket. It's not, so The Board of Education order. First time of business is the Pledge of Allegiance. If you join us. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Next item on the agenda is public comments. Mr. Barbas.
Good evening. I'm the secretary, and I will be handling public comments. I will call your name, and if you could come up and introduce yourself for the record, giving your address, and you will have 3 minutes to speak. When you've got 30 seconds left, I will put my hand up, and when time's up, I will call that. So please try to honor that time if you could. Our first speaker will be Stanley Schuler.
Stanley Schuler, 97 McKinley Avenue. I work at Nathan Hill, former president of Local 1042. I placed before the board a packet that I had about board policies, also a packet about Mr. Goring used to give us memos on how overtime works, and also I have a little issue because with the facility department, we have a problem because of overtime and other stuff, violation that's going on. Overtime's not being done correctly. Jobs are not being posted. There was a job posted for Brian McMahon, head custodian, and Mr. Hordell just putting anybody who he wants in there, and you're supposed to go by seniority, and also supposed to go by if you qualify for the job. I was the number one candidate, and about 7 other people, and that didn't happen. It took it off. Norwalk High is still not posted. I understand we're being privatized, but we still have to go by our contract. When I was president, we had a lot of issues before with overtimes and stuff, and I explained Mr. Cordell's board policy, how overtime is supposed to run. The facilities department is supposed to be over overtime as far as if a float is not available, if it has special work on the weekend, stuff like that. Then you had, so I'm upset about that because we have our maintenance department guys who's coming in, getting special codes along with other teachers to the building, access, and taking away the custodian's overtime and our responsibility. According to the board policy, the head custodian, he's a representative of that school and of the board. We're supposed to be there. A couple of years ago, the same thing happened on one of the holidays, Memorial Day. It was given to different teachers, coaches to come in the building, and it's not supposed to be that. I also asked a request in the middle of the pamphlet for videos. I would like to have a request of that, and even put it in writing the dates that I have. I'm really upset because even when we got privatized, Mr. Simmons asked a lot of questions on how stuff is supposed to be done as far as the new company who privatized our schools. And they said that, Mr. Rich Ruler said that those custodians supposed to be trained, they're supposed to do their own overtime. Now, they give, facilities department giving the security, the maintenance guys overtime to come back for fire alarms and stuff like that. It's just a mess. And Mr. Hordell knows our contract. The principal knows our contract. Part of my job as a head custodian is not only to monitor the guys' work and let them know any violations, but also to let the principal know and management know. So he just doing that willfully. So my thing is, I asked the union, I want to make it public today, we have to file a charge against him if he keeps this practice up, because he knows better. Thank you.
Our next public speaker is Alvin Mosby.
Yes, my name is Alvin Mosby, 6 Brook Hill Lane, Norwalk, Connecticut. I'm here tonight. I got a real concern. I live and was born and raised in Norwalk all my life. Got hired in '87, work at the Board of Education right now for 29 years now. And I went from Rowayton, I went from Cranberry to West Rock to Brick School. Now I'm at Marvin School now. The problem I'm having right now, when I came doing on March the 4th, 2014, I spoke about the outsource coming to Brick School. And I was told that there wasn't gonna be no outsource coming to Brick School at all. And the only reason I'm here tonight because I want to let the public all know what went down, and I think it's wrong what they did me. I've been for 14 years as a head custodian at Brick School. Come to work every day, do my job. got a lot of sick days. I never take no hard, no time off. When I retire, I wish I could get all my sick days back what I earned. I only get back maybe 100. I wish I could get all my sick days back, but here goes the problem. I went on my vacation during August the 1st, and I got a pack. I'm going to pass that to all your 9-member board. I was upset because they did not give me a reason why they're moving from my school. They sent me a certified letter to my house, August 1st to sign. They didn't ever state the main reason why they're going to outsource Briggs. And I spoke to Mr. Lyon about it during March 4th, and you will see the email and stuff where they respond back saying there was no outsource coming to Briggs School. The problem they're having now, what they were saying that if a person retired or quit, didn't have the right to move that person. But guess what? I didn't retire, and my part-time man didn't quit, and other schools didn't have the same problem. They all would stay put. I know y'all want to outsource all our custodians, but guess what? I work hard, so I'm not custodian. I don't care, you can bring an outside man tomorrow, they're not going to do the same way I do. And I'm going to say it right now, I work hard. I went over to Marvin School doing the same thing. One lady seen me and said, oh, you're a good worker. Where you from? I'm from Briggs. I did the same type of work at Briggs School. I'm doing that at Marvin now, on my knees, scrubbing the floors, busting my tails and stuff like that. I'm saying I earn my money and stuff too. I work hard, come to work every day. Went over there, I didn't have no set of keys at all. I had to wait to get the set of keys from the principal. She was real nice. She gave me a little set of keys to get in, you know what I'm saying? I haven't got the silent control number over there. I think I'm being treated wrong. I think that some of the guys being treated wrong. And I feel that I want to know the reason why they did not tell me what the outsources at Brick School. Give me a reason. They never did. I'm still pissed about it now. I want to know what the reason why y'all moving from Brick when y'all say that there wasn't going to be no outsource coming to Brick School. And I sent a letter to Dr. Aldemowski and stuff. They didn't have the common courtesy to call me as a person to meet with me behind closed door and talk to me and stuff like that, you know. That's why I'm kind of upset about, you know. At least talk to me and tell me the reason why I'll be moving you and stuff. I would have no problem. Don't wait till I go on my vacation, then you're going to sit there and pull something. I got the news from my night, man. He called me up, I got some bad news. That's wrong. I'm on my vacation, trying to enjoy my vacation and stuff like that. That's why I wish I got to look into. I'm going to pass the package down so y'all can see the whole thing. Thank you very much.
Our next public speaker is Mr. Jeffrey Spar.
Thank you.
Good evening, members of the board. First, I want to thank all those that were in attendance at the special ed meeting last night, Ms. Mosby, Ms. Harris, and Mr. Barbas. I'm here because one of the items on your agenda tonight is to have an ADHD awareness month within the district, and I'm here to speak in support of that and to give you some additional facts. 7 quick facts about ADHD. ADHD is real. ADHD is a common, non-discriminatory disorder. It's affecting people of every age, gender, religious, and socioeconomic background. In 2011, the Center for Disease Control and Prevention reported that the percentage of children in the United States who have been diagnosed with ADHD was at 9.5%. That's massive. Other studies have shown it's up to something in the neighborhood of 13 to 15%. You hear the terms ADHD, ADD, and AD/HD. Those all refer to the same disorder. Some just happen to have a hyperactivity component. I remember when I went down to Columbus School one year, my son was being let out of the kindergarten classroom, and some of the other kids that were coming in from recess said, "Here comes the bad boys." My son was one of those bad boys, identified by his classmates. His badness was the fact that he couldn't sit still in his seat, he couldn't pay attention, he didn't raise his hand, and we found out he was being sent down to the principal 2 or 3 times a day. What we did was, rather than getting mad, we decided to collaborate with the school, and we worked with the school, and I'm here to ask you to work with the school as well, and with the parents. And I think a good first step is making a declaration of an ADHD awareness month within the school district, but I'd like to have you do a little bit more than just make that declaration. I'd like to have you put a little bit of activity behind that. I don't know if you're familiar with what Dear Colleague letters are. Dear Colleague letters are sent out from the United States Department of Education sometimes on a particular topic, and these were sent to the districts around the United States of America by the United States Department of Education. It says, "I write this letter to clarify and provide guidance to federal obligations in providing students with ADHD the necessary treatment. Over the past 5 fiscal years, the Department's Office of Civil Rights has received more than 16,000 complaints alleging discrimination on the basis of disability in elementary and secondary programs. Approximately 2,000 of these were complaints about discriminations against students with ADHD. Many students with ADHD are still experiencing academic and behavioral challenges. The OCR investigations have revealed that students with ADHD could be denied FAPE because of problems that the school districts have in identifying and evaluating. In addition, even if properly identified, a student with ADHD who is determined to have a disability may not always receive the required services. It's noted by the United States government that failure to provide needed services to students with disabilities can result in serious social, emotional, and educational harm to the students involved in it. It can also unnecessarily drain school districts and family resources if the school is ineffectually attempting to meet the needs of students with disabilities through failed interventions or disciplinary consequences. Through the letter, the United States Department of Education asked that school districts recommit themselves to providing assistance to the students and the families. What I'd like to ask the school district to do, and I don't think it's asking that much, is if on the school's website, if you could post a copy of the Dear Colleague letter so that anybody could access it. And also attached to the Dear Colleague letter is a publication from the United States Department of Education, which is called the Students with ADHD in Section 504 Resource Guide. This is a federal publication. So what I'm asking is, in addition to you voting tonight for an ADHD awareness, if you would please post these resources on your website so that anybody could access them. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. And as the parent of a child with ADHD, I definitely endorse these efforts. Our next speaker will be Mary Jordan.
Thank you very much. Good evening, Mary Jordan, 9 Mott Avenue, Norwalk. The 2016-17 school year is fully underway. 10% of our days are done. Many initial adjustments have already taken place, and we are grateful for all of the teacher, staff, and administrator collaboration that has taken place already. So many members of our school communities have been working hard to make this a successful year for our students. Nonetheless, staff morale is at a record low this early in so many buildings for our teachers, who must do more and more with less and less in those buildings that are so desperately need the attention that I know the facilities committee is struggling to give it. At all levels, resources are increasingly technology dependent, such as internet-based textbooks and online assessments, but logins and internet access is still problematic, and it's still causing frustrations. There is a shortage of Chromebooks and other machines for students. I'm told that more will soon be here, but in the meantime, we struggle, we make do, we share. We are very happy to have our teachers continue to be able to serve families at the Brookside Pre-K, and we're optimistic that that facility will soon be fully staffed. I am working on many projects with Dr. Connor and Ms. Sherry, and one of them is to iron out the kinks in the Norwalk Early Childhood Center. In elementary levels, teachers are looking forward very much to a very successful project being completed, and that is the new progress reports, which will soon be put before you for your approval. Elementary teachers are trying to develop strategies for 90-minute blocks of language arts and math instruction, developing skills with the new curricula, and work efficiently with fewer aides and less time. In middle school, with larger class sizes and more time in instruction, teachers are struggling to adapt to the new demands. We are all eager to raise the gap and close the gap and raise the bar. At all levels, the new highly efficient schedules mean that there are no minutes to spare, none for hallway passing time or anywhere, and teachers are struggling to find time to have lunch, to go to the restroom. We have 2 minutes for passing time between classes. Teachers might need to go all the way till the end of the day before they have a break at all. And that goes for preparing for their new classes that are so much more demanding than last year. Many adjustments are needed. Some are being offered, and I am pleading for more. We do recognize that the SBAC scores were distressing. We do not recognize that all of those SBAC scores are sourced from teacher practices. We believe that there are many sources, including the constant shifting and churn of leadership in the district, We have lots of good people at all the levels at this point. We want to look forward to working with them. Please show us flexibility to enact change, to make improvements, and to continue the core work of our mission. Thank you.
Perfect timing. Our last public speaker signed up is Tony Williams.
Thank you very much, President Lyons, members of the Norwalk Board of Education. I am Tony Williams, a resident of Norwalk, and I represent CONCAN, the Connecticut Coalition for Achievement Now. At CONCAN, we bring advocates, policymakers, parents, and educators together to change the system and give all kids access to great public schools. CONCAN applauds Superior Court Justice McCauser for issuing such a courageous ruling in the 11-year-old CJEF versus Rel case. The CJEF ruling exposed to the nation and to our lawmakers in Hartford the inadequate and inequitable education that far too many of Connecticut's students receive from their educational systems in one of the wealthiest states in the wealthiest country in the world. The judge's ruling placed great emphasis on the fact while some of our students are outpacing the nation and at times the world, there are still far too many children who are not receiving the same fundamental opportunities and graduating woefully unprepared for college or career. Our economic reality is this: in just a few years, most jobs in our state will require a college degree in some post-secondary education. But we are not preparing our students to succeed in that reality, as the judge's ruling made clear. Judge McCauser called out the truth. There is no rational, sustainable, or verifiable funding mechanism in place to ensure that all our kids have the opportunity to succeed in life. We need a funding formula that funds children fairly in Norwalk and across all our public schools. It's also the position of CONCAN that money alone will not solve our state's education issues. Any changes in how we fund our schools must be accompanied by the sort of critical improvement cited by the judge. Although the Supreme Court has granted an appeal on the CJEF ruling, we are not discouraged, and neither are many parents. If anything, the ruling has left us feeling more determined to advocate for the quality education that all Connecticut's kids need and deserve. This case has taken a decade to get this far. Our children cannot wait another decade for us to solve these problems. While adults continue to work through technical issues associated with these legal actions, too many kids continue to languish in schools that are not meeting their needs. Some parents are finding the courts to be the only avenue to address the disparities in the quality of education many receive. The CJEF ruling came on the heels of the filing of another high-profile lawsuit, Martinez versus Malloy, where 4 parents from Bridgeport and Hartford filed a federal case on behalf of their children, echoing McCauser's main concern that all Connecticut children are given an opportunity to have a great education. It is up to all of us to make our voices heard and continue to urge our legislatures to end politics as usual and to not protect the status quo. CONCAN asks you all to encourage your state leaders to act now and pursue the bold and comprehensive changes that are needed to see results for students. Urge our leaders in Hartford to take action and address the issues in the CJEF ruling this upcoming session, and not to wait until all the legal wrangling is over years down the road. We are ready to continue to fight for what we know is right, and that is that every child, no matter their race, household income, or zip code, deserves a chance at a quality education. It's our moral obligation to improve a system that has let down our children for years. Thanks.
Thank you, Tony. That is our last public comment signed up.
All right, thank you.
Excuse me.
Yes,
Yes, sorry.
sorry, Cheryl.
Can we, I'm not asking for tonight, but can we get an update on the issues or that was brought up tonight, and how everything is being handled? Can you bring it back to the board so we can at least know because I hear a lot of questions was asked, and I know Mr. Spar even mentioned about having something else like posted on the website. I would appreciate if you can just bring some of those answers or how you handle it. Who's going to take care of it?
I think the answer is yes. We'll do that.
And what about the issues where the custodian, he concerned about the security and the posting and all that stuff? Is Mrs. Sherry going to handle that?
Yeah, so I think that would be an issue for consultation with Ms. Sherry, which she does with all of our unions.
Okay, right, and the issue of, the other issue where the person did not get an answer, was ignored, I'm seeing the letters and all that, would that be handled by Ms. Sherry as well?
Correct.
Okay, so she will reach out to them?
Right, I mean, she may have a different view of the facts, but clearly that's the place to discuss it. And she is the kind of the first line of preventing any contract violation and making sure that our procedures are properly followed.
And the issues with the Mrs. Jordan, is that something that would be handled through Sherry, or is that something
Well,
through?
Ms. Jordan has very broad access to all of us, including monthly consultation with me, regular meetings with Dr. Connor, Mr. Costanzo, yes, we talk about those things
Okay, well,
all the time.
could we get as a board a follow-up to see where you're at? Something that's states that we met, whether you guys come to an agreement or not, but I would like to stay on top of this, knowing what's going on, so if that's possible.
Well, I mean, I can for specific issues.
But,
And, I mean, here, I'm not sure this is a specific issue. This is kind of a general
right,
attribution and desire for flexibility. And, I guess the focus of this for a board member, for a policy board, would be relative to the direction that you've set through the strategic operating plan and the objectives you approved tonight. And those are the things that we will do, and we will be committed to doing and getting the results that you've determined our students need.
yes, and I just want to make sure that everyone, because I know that that's one of our big initiatives, is to have everyone together, and I wanted to ensure that in order for us to move on, because I'm fine with the SOP plan and everything, I just want to make sure that everyone is at the table or have a voice. Whether or not we go down a certain direction, it's just that in order for us to move ahead and close the achievement gap or try to bring everyone together, we need to at least, in our own backyard, we need to make sure that people are at least heard.
Yeah, so your point is well taken. There are multiple voices. In the case of the teachers union in particular, there are multiple venues for that voice. And we have a very robust contract, which some 78 pages long of work rules that has to be followed. And so within that context, that context provides the kind of the basis for how we implement the goals that the board has set.
Yeah, and that's where, and another issue is that's why I'm glad that Ms. Sherry is going to handle as far as the custodial union is the security aspect of it. And I know that's something that we just hired the security person to come in, that with people having all these codes and stuff to buildings and everything, I think, we need to look into, I'm listening to what I could hear, and I have a little concern, based on security as to if we have outside contractor with all the codes and stuff that's to our schools, who's really monitoring that to make sure that it's not giving out. So I don't know, that's why things like that I would like to.
I think Stanley was referring to our own maintenance personnel coming in on the weekends to perform work. And I think it's the position of the custodians union that the head custodian needs to be present and paid when that is occurring. I don't think our administration shares that view, and I think that's what the issue is.
Okay, so.
So it's, I wouldn't describe this as a security issue. This is an issue of whether or not the head custodian needs to be present whenever anyone is in the building, even our own workers, maintenance workers.
Sure.
I just have a quick question. I'm just listening to the union issue. Do you meet with all of the unions?
No, myself personally, there are required consultations by contract with the NASA union, which is the administrators, principals union, and with the NFT, the teachers union. Ms. Sherry has regular consultations with the support staff unions, and then obviously for any grievance that is filed under our contract, so we have 8 unions and 8 collective bargaining agreements, I would get involved at level 2 of any grievance that she would be unable to solve at level 1.
No, I was just asking because I know Ms. Yorton has access to you, so I was just wondering if all the other union heads have it. But that's by contract.
Administrators and teachers for directly with the superintendent, and again, secondarily for the support staff unions.
Gotcha.
Okay, any other questions, comments? No? All right, proceed to the next item on the agenda. Given the decision that Tony was talking about, the big decision in the CCJF case, I had asked former Mayor Alex Knopp if he would come tonight and give us an update on what comes next after the Superior Court decision, the appeal, give us a sense of how we got here, where we go from here, and also after Alex, State Representative Fred Wilms, who will talk about some legislative responses to litigation. So Mayor Knopp, if you can come up and enlighten us. I want to first thank Alex and his Yale contingent there for playing a significant role in that litigation, and well done.
Thank you. Thank you very much. First, it's a pleasure to be back in this room in City Hall on a Tuesday night. I look back fondly on those memories. Also want to say it's a pleasure to see people like Jeff Spar and Tom Hamilton, who are great servants of the city and continue to do a wonderful job, and I enjoyed my relationship with them, and I'm very glad to see them tonight. So first, I'd like to begin by thanking the Board of Education for its support of the lawsuit of the Connecticut Coalition for Justice and Education Funding versus REL. And in particular, thank Mayor Rilling for his willingness after he became mayor to join the steering committee of CJF and to attend many meetings and to continue the financial support of the city for the lawsuit. We've just finished a long trial of several months involving over 50 witnesses, many of them professional experts, 1,000 exhibits, thousands of findings of fact, and that kind of major social change lawsuit can't be accomplished without an enormous amount of support from all of the members of the coalition. So I really want to thank you for that, and unfortunately I have to say tonight I'm not sure that your duty of support is necessarily finished. It may be continuing. What I want to really talk to you tonight is partly about the lawsuit, but also partly about the process of social change that we're trying to bring about. I think all of us know that in the end, as has been the case in most of the other states where there has been some successful outcome of an education finance litigation, that the end result comes about because of collaboration between the judicial, executive, and legislative branches. And rarely can a policy solution that changes fundamentally how education is funded come about merely as a result of a court order. Sometimes it takes a court order to stimulate the process, or in our case in Connecticut, we turn to the courts because generally the legislature and executive branch had failed to listen to our grievances from places like Norwalk and Stanford in terms of education funding. Basically, all education funding formulas throughout the country have 2 elements. One of them is some way to measure need, and the other is some way to measure wealth. In Connecticut, unfortunately, our formula did not do a good enough job of measuring need and didn't do a good enough job of realistically measuring wealth. And as a result, we ended up in Norwalk and Stamford and many other places in Connecticut finding that we had to rely excessively on local property taxes to fund the needs that we felt our children deserve. Oftentimes it was not enough, but the end result has been an extremely high burden of regressive taxes on citizens in this town who are considered by many to be more property rich and cash poor than maybe is anticipated by these funding formulas. So we went to court, reluctantly. I think no one turns to litigation given the limitations of the judicial system with its own unique procedures, timetables, and requirements as a way to solve important social issues. But in the end, if there's no legislative or policy alternative, then that's what you have to do, and we did. And when we brought the case in 2005, it was a long shot. The trial court in 2008 struck down our right to be in court, said under the Constitution of Connecticut, there is no right to an adequate education for children. We appealed that to the Supreme Court in 2008, and in 2010, the Connecticut Supreme Court ruled that the trial court was wrong. The Supreme Court reversed the decision and established a fundamental right to an adequate education was part of the Connecticut Constitution. That was a momentous decision, and it then sent the case back to the trial court for a factual determination of whether Connecticut was in fact meeting its constitutional duty. All this takes a long number of years, but regardless of the outcome of the appeal that we're now going to be arguing, I think it's important to realize that the constitutional right is a solid, well-established right under the Connecticut Constitution, and even if it turns out that the current Supreme Court finds out, determines that now Connecticut is not in violation of its duty, in the future that may not be the case. So that standard is now in the law as part of our Constitution. I think it's a major victory of the CGF case, and again, one supported by you, the Norwalk Board of Education and the Common Council. Now, the decision of Judge McAllister has been reviewed a lot in the papers. Tony Williams discussed it. But let's not miss the forest for the trees. The trees are a lot of the things, the funding formula, teacher evaluations, special education, elementary and secondary graduation requirements, and so on. But the forest of that decision is that the property tax system to fund education in Connecticut is fundamentally broken and unfair. Those of us who've been active in policy areas, whether education or dealing with issues of poverty or municipal-state relations, always come back to the fact that the property tax is a major problem in Connecticut, and that property tax reform to lessen the burden to deliver services at the city and state level is a key part of what we need to modernize Connecticut and make it successful. Well, this judge had the backbone, finally, to announce that the property tax system used to fund services like education is fundamentally unfair. And whatever else we debate about that decision or about individual policy recommendations made by the judge, let's not forget the big picture, because I think it is a momentous landmark decision for the state, and one that should be referred to in many other policy areas in addition to education. Our main complaint was this, that education funding in Connecticut is irrational and arbitrary. And those are terms of legal art. They don't mean, when we say it's irrational, doesn't mean that somebody who devised the formula had a bad day or ends up screaming or yelling or something. Irrational means it's not based on a factual and evidence-based analysis of what the actual need is to educate children from all walks of life. What does it cost in Norwalk, where we have a large Haitian population, to employ the number of French Creole-speaking guidance counselors and teachers to give those kids an opportunity to talk about secondary education, where to go to college, to work with their parents on dealing with homework. It's an enormously expensive proposition. Yet right now, in the state funding formula, there is no separate element for English language learners, much less to help parents of English language learners who need that kind of support. What does it cost to educate those kids and give them an opportunity? Same thing for children who grow up in poverty. What does it really cost? Is it half the same amount, double the amount? We don't really know. And that's why when we say it's irrational and arbitrary, it means that the numbers in the formula to put a dollar figure next to the need factor in this two-factor formula has to be done on a more rational, scientific, measurable, and evidence-based purpose. That's the goal. Now, the Supreme Court just today agreed to accept this appeal on an emergency basis out of the public interest. But they did that in our case in 2008. Unfortunately, it took them 2 years to reach a decision. I hope that's not the case this time. But while the case is pending in the Supreme Court, and almost regardless of the outcome, I think that the CJET decision has really stimulated a new dialogue throughout the state about education generally and education funding in particular. My request to you tonight is to continue on this sort of long march and not put it on the back burner because it's on appeal or give up hope because the Supreme Court may well be a harsh critic of some of the trees in the judge's opinion. I think we need to keep working together to put this issue before the legislature and the governor. I know that Representative Williams is going to be talking about one of his ideas, which I think has merit. But generally, I was struck by the fact that when Governor Malloy was the mayor of Stanford, he and I were sort of original plaintiffs in the case. And he's been a very tough litigant against it. But now that the decision has come out, Governor Malloy, to his credit, has said that he doesn't think he needs to wait for the Supreme Court to act to keep working to improve education funding in Connecticut. Let's put him to the test and see if we can come up with ways to measure the needs of communities like Norwalk and to stop overestimating its wealth so we come up with a realistic funding formula. As I mentioned before, you know, this Board of Ed coming out with statements based on the facts of the number of different languages spoken in Norwalk, for example, the difficulty of finding teachers and guidance counselors and principals and others who can communicate effectively with students of all cultural and language backgrounds could be a very important research contribution, because I think those of us who've been advocating for change should now continue to push specific ideas for reforming the funding formula, even while the Supreme Court is considering the legal aspects of this case. So again, I want to thank you for your support. I think we've had some enormous, giant steps for legal victories. Connecticut happens to be one of those states where education litigation has been unusually impactful, going back to the 1976 decision of Horton versus Meskel, the 1996 decision of Sheff versus O'Neill, and now the 2010 decision of CJEF versus Rel, establishing the constitutional right to an adequate education. And hopefully we'll be able to sustain a lot of the aspects of Judge McAllister's decision from 2 weeks ago. So I thank you for inviting me, and I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Any questions?
That may be.
Mr. Mayor, for former
Not
Mr.
a
Mayor.
question, but a statement. I really want to commend former Mayor Knopp for his tireless effort, working towards trying to push this forward, attending many meetings, serving as counsel, and really on behalf of Norwalk, and not only Norwalk, but the entire state of Connecticut. You know, Norwalk has been shortchanged for a long time, and no matter how many people tried to change the ECS funding, it just wasn't being heard in Hartford, and this is about the only way it's going to happen. And the only question I would have, I've read Attorney General Jebsen's appeal, and I've also read the statement from Mr. Finley regarding CJEF versus REL and our statement. What are your thoughts on that, and how do you think this is going to go in the future?
Well, one of the issues that the Supreme Court decided, and of course every court has to decide when presented with this issue, is the issue of education funding under the state constitution what's called justiciable? That is it an issue that the judiciary can deal with, or is it solely what's called a political question that should be left to the other branches of government? Generally, things involving certain aspects of election law and campaign finance are often considered to be political issues that the judiciary is not going to get involved in. Some states that don't want to take a position, the judiciary says, education funding is a political issue, let the legislature decide. It's not justiciable. It's not subject to a judicial remedy. And as I say, in our state, we have a tradition, because our state constitution has the affirmative duty of the state to provide education for all children in Connecticut. Our state has the tradition of finding education issues often to be justiciable, subject to judicial remedy. One of the things that disappointed me about the Attorney General's opinion was their effort to claim that the defect in Judge McAllister's decision was that he was trying to tell the legislature what to do, and that only the legislature and the governor should say anything about education policy. Well, the Supreme Court in 2010 rejected that point of view by saying that education finance under the Constitution is a justiciable issue. And therefore, I thought it was kind of a step backward in legal terms for the Attorney General's office to be arguing what, in my mind, is already well-decided law. In terms of the outcome, it doesn't hurt anybody to be kind of frank about it. These are all mixed issues of law and fact. And there is no probably, gleaming perfect position out there that anybody can say with certainty, this is what the court will decide. I know Mr. Lyons is trying to rope me into predicting how much money Norwalk would get.
You can do it, Al.
But I think I've learned not to take the bait, I think. We really don't know how these issues are going to come out. One of the interesting things about the judge's decision was that he applied a very conservative legal standard to his factual determinations. So his factual determinations were, let me say, quite liberal and far-reaching. His legal standards were quite conservative and very modest. That was based on the 2010 Supreme Court decision, and therefore it'd be kind of interesting to see how these issues evolve under that dual kind of approach. I think only a fool would make a prediction. But at the same time, our lawyers who are from Debevoise, who are arguing the case in the courtroom, won permission from the judge to argue the issues that we thought should have been decided a different way as well. Normally, we would prefer to wait until after the remedies are done before doing that, but they've gotten permission to do that on this emergency appeal basis as well. So I wish I had an answer of more certainty, Mayor, for you, but every step so far we've been more successful than I anticipated, and I'm going to continue to be optimistic.
Thank you, and again, thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate your comments very much.
Anything else, Mike?
I just wanted to kind of follow up on your answer, and I know, I've known you a long time, Alex, and you're a very conservative guy, and you're not going to mislead us. But by kind of one of the points you made that, Jepson's kind of bringing up this point that's already been ruled on by the Connecticut Supreme Court. Are the current Supreme Court justices bound? I'm not a lawyer, so I needed to confirm this with you. Are they bound kind of to that previous ruling, or can they modify that?
Well, if in fact the case were not justiciable, that is not subject to judicial remedy, then there wouldn't have been any trial at all. So the fact that this is coming after the trial has happened makes that assertion that it was not justiciable a little bit strange. But this judge really took full advantage of his authority to issue rulings on education policy matters, and whether or not the court feels that he stayed within the sort of bounds of what's considered to be sort of judicial remedies, we'll have to see. That's why we wanted the remedy phase to go forward. So far, only the liability phase of the trial is done. Usually most trials like this have two phases. The liability issue, which is, did the state fail to meet its constitutional duty? The judge said, yes, they failed. Then the judge said, okay, you have 180 days, state, to propose remedies. Plaintiffs, you have 60 days to comment, propose alternatives. Then I'll have a hearing, and then I'll issue my order about remedies. Well, we want to hear what those are. And that's an important part of the whole picture. That's why our argument to the Supreme Court was, we're not denying that this is a matter of great public interest, and we're not denying that you're going to hear an appeal sooner or later. But let's have the judge finish the process that was set out so that we can take a look at the whole picture, liability and remedies together, before making some decision. And so, that's what we hope will end up happening. I had hoped that the court would have deferred to the trial judge and let him continue and finish the trial before weighing in on the appeal, but the Chief Justice made a different decision.
And we're not going to hear, I mean, the Connecticut Supreme Court, I mean, it's going to be at least, I don't know, 6 months?
Sure.
Potentially.
As I say, the last time.
Potentially longer.
The last time we did an appeal like this, they waited 2 years.
2 years.
But the statute under which the state appealed, as we had appealed in 2008, talks about the public interest in expediting a decision, and it may be that they will decide the case in a shorter amount of time than they do a traditional case, but that's entirely in their discretion. There's no statute that require, or practice law that requires, practice book provision that requires them to do it in a certain amount of time.
Well, we really appreciate it, and so do the
Thank you.
students. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
All right, anything else? Thank you very much.
All right,
Alex.
thank you very much
Appreciate
for.
it. All right, Fred, what's next in the state legislature?
Well, hello, everyone. I'm State Representative Fred Wilms. I represent the 142nd District here in Norwalk. First of all, I just want to congratulate Alex publicly for his hard work and dedication, and his whole team. Obviously, this is a momentous decision, certainly something in Norwalk's strong interest, so I just want to publicly say thank you, Alex, for that. Well, I mean, my interest, as you know, started in the whole ECS school funding formula started with when I served in the city, whether on the Common Council or the BET, say some of my former colleagues here, and we had to deal with this every year around budget time. And also with many of us who we know, our kids in the school system, seeing, how is it that we seem to be overtaxed and underfunded in the schools all at the same time? So when I ran for the state legislature, I said that one of the things that I wanted to continue working on was the ECS formula and see what we could do to help with the school funding. And in the 2 years that I've been there, each year I've submitted last year I submitted a bill. This year I submitted a request for a bill to move the process forward. What I found in terms of just what I've just found in the last 2 years in terms of the legislature, where they're at, in terms of our issue, in terms of where they're at, basically a few observations. One is they think we're rich. They think Norwalk is rich. They lump us with Westport, Darien, New Canaan. We're all part of Fairfield County. We're part of the Gold Coast. We're all part of the New York City Economic Zone. We're all just kind of alike. So that's kind of that. Secondly, I would absolutely agree that the ECS formula or the way the funds are allocated are completely irrational. I mean, there is a formula which doesn't serve us well. I'll get to that in a moment. But in terms of how the actual dollars are then allocated, there's the formula, and then that would imply a certain set of numbers, but the actual numbers are very different from that. And so obviously that difference comes from, well, candidly, we're in a legislature, so it comes from political deals. It comes from people making decisions that are based on, not on any kind of rational basis. So absolutely, I completely agree from my own observation that there is not a rational basis. As far as the formula itself, seems to have been influenced a lot by the Horton versus Meskel case. The formula seems to place a strong reliance on property values and hardly anything on individual income. So right now, the formula is weighted 90% towards property wealth and 10% towards income. My two bills attempted to change that formula more in our favor, more to 50-50. I personally don't understand how, because someone may have a lot of wealth, how that translates then into an ability to fund a school system or to spend money or to earn money. It's a totally different financial concept. So based on all those factors, I completely agree that where we're at is very irrational, and we know ourselves that we're being severely shortchanged. In terms of getting to the court decision and reactions from the legislature, from what I've been able to glean, I would say that a turnaround in 180 days is simply unrealistic. I don't see our legislature being able to come up with a whole new educational policy, funding policy within 180 days. Candidly, we have elections now. There's going to be turnover. We don't know what the leadership is going to look like. We don't start session until January of next year. So those are just practical realities. And then when you layer in terms of the normal work that the legislature does, as you all know, we have a very strong fiscal crisis, which is very consuming. Then you layer on top of it all just the normal day-to-day types of things. This year, for example, the legislature spent a lot of time on the opioid crisis that we have in our state, with people dying from heroin and fentanyl overdoses. And so that consumed a lot of time. So there's many other things that the legislature does. Having said that, I think that, so I don't think anything's going to happen one way or the other between now and the first week of January when we start our session. I think candidly, my own opinion is that the legislature will defer any substantive action until they're required to by the court. And I think to Alex's point, I think the purpose of the Supreme Court or the court ruling is to provide a focus for the legislature where, okay, we now have to do something. Because candidly, I've noticed in the legislature, we really don't want to do much if we don't have to. If we don't have to make people angry and change things and switch things around, we'd rather not do that. It's easier to kind of kick the can down the road. So a court decision does provide a very powerful focal point, which I agree is needed in order for the legislature to do something substantive. If indeed the Supreme Court doesn't decide for, I don't know, a year, 2 years, 3 years, whatever it is, I think the legislature will wait until that final decision comes about and will react to what that final decision says. I think in the meantime, personally, in terms of what should we do to sort of maximize Norwalk's position in this interim period, I think we first of all should just make the assumption that I guess we'll win, if you will, the Supreme Court case. We have to make assumptions in terms of basing our actions, and I always would rather base my actions optimistically, based on optimistic assumptions, and I do believe that we have a good chance, as a non-lawyer, I think we have a good chance of prevailing in some capacity, certainly with the allocation of the educational funding. One system that I'm interested in, and I don't presume to say that it's perfect, and I'm sure other legislators have other opinions and there may be other approaches, but thinking of a funding system that has a rational basis to it, thinking of a system or allocation system has a rational basis that is made independent of the legislature, that is well established, I think well accepted, makes a lot of policy sense, is the DRG concept, District Reference Group concept. And that's been around for, I think, at least 20 years. And there's DRG groupings of A through I. Looking on it's determined by the Connecticut Department of Education. And they indicate, in terms of where they come up with these DRG rankings, they indicate a number of things that former Mayor Knopp spoke about. There's 3 indicators there for socioeconomic status. One is median family income. Second is parental education, and third is parental occupation. Then there are 3 indicators of need. The percentage of children who have single-family parents, percentage of children who are eligible for free and reduced school lunches, and then the percentage of children whose families speak a language other than English. And then finally, there's an enrollment criteria, the number of students that are in the district schools. So as I look at these 7 items and how I relate them to Norwalk, I think they certainly relate to us very well. And certainly, there's certainly a rationality and a reasonableness behind these particular criteria. What I also like is that if you look at how the Department of Education ranks the various school systems, they rank all the towns in Connecticut from Group A to Group I. Group I is the most stressed. Group A is the least stressed. So not surprisingly, who's in Group A? Group A includes Darien, New Canaan, Westport, Wilton, our neighbors. The ones that, you know, and that's why they think we're DRG A, you know, because we're surrounded by A's. I's are, again, the most stressed, and again, I don't think any surprise. So Bridgeport, Hartford, New Britain, New Haven, New London, Waterbury. We're H, so we're right next to the last. And I do think that that captures it. Our compadres are Stamford, Danbury, East Hartford, and then there's several others. But anyway, that's something that I think makes a lot of sense to look at, or something that would be a good basis for a future conversation. What I'd like to see happen, and I will continue my work, I know earlier this year we met and you passed a resolution in support of this whole process. And I think it certainly elevated the conversation here in Norwalk, and it was very, very productive. I also want to commend State Representative Gail Lavielle, who's here. Representative Lavielle is the ranking member on the Education Committee. And I think that if any change is ordered by the court, I mean, I see two possible ways the legislature would react. One would be through the Education Committee. And Representative Lavielle is the ranking Republican member on that committee for the House. The ranking Republican member for the Senate is Tony Boucher, who I think many of us know. So certainly there's good local representation. The current chair for the Senate is Senator Schlossberg. She is from West Haven, which is in our DG ranking. So I think there's some kinness in relation to that. The other might be some sort of special commission. I really wouldn't know or could say, but that's how I think it would react. So I think in terms of what do we do over the next 1 or 2 or 3 years, clearly, you know, like we said before, there's no magic bullets. There's nothing going to happen immediately. But I think since we're talking about the legislature, we're talking about building coalitions. Because at the end of the day, in the House, there's 151 of us. You need 76 votes to pass something. And in the Senate, there's 36. You need 19 to pass something. So you need votes. And so it's a matter of building coalitions, bringing people together in support of a policy objective. I would like to help bring people together in support of an objective that helps Norwalk, obviously, but also makes sense from an entire statewide point of view. Certainly, in terms of where to start, one place to start would be our own delegation. We have 5 state representatives and 1 state senator. You know, I think it would make sense if all of us could work together in some capacity, moving in a similar direction on behalf of Norwalk. I think it also makes sense to reach out to Stamford. They're in our DRG ranking, and they experience exactly the same problem that we do. I know that Mayor Rilling has been up in Hartford to talk about this issue. I can say that the Stamford Mayor, Martin, has been very aggressive in being up in Hartford to talk about ECS for Stamford. So it seems to me there's a ready ally right there. And certainly, I think this kind of system would have the support of certainly a lot of these cities in the Group I rankings. I think they would be very happy to have a system where the I's got the highest per pupil allocation and then worked its way down to the A's who got the lowest per pupil allocation. I think that would build political support for that. Candidly, if the state doesn't have a lot of extra money, if it was a situation where we had to reallocate the existing pie differently, there would be losers. There would be towns that would get less money, candidly. I don't say I have a perfect answer for that, but one suggestion, I know Representative Lavielle had suggested this and others as well, is that for those towns, perhaps in the A or B rankings, where they probably would be probably zeroed out, essentially. One item that would be of interest to them, and I do represent a small portion of New Canaan, so I could speak for New Canaan. One interest that would be of interest to them is relief from mandates. So they would get less money, but then they would have less mandates that they would have to perhaps pursue as a quid pro quo. And I think at the end of the day, we want to try to build something that has broad-based support and not seen as pitting one group against That's another group. So those are my observations, hopes, prayers, desires, and I just want to thank you for inviting me and coming here to share those.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Eric?
Thank you so much, Representative Wilms. The question I really wanted to get back to is you were mentioning obviously building coalitions. Since you'd been here last time, I think that was something that we had discussed and we're hoping to see happen. Since this sweeping mandate from the judge, has there been any communication between your fellow Norwalk delegates or any other of the delegates that you were hoping to reach out to in Stamford or likewise communities?
Yes. There's been some. There's more work that needs to be done. There's been progress made from last year. I did have some success. We had success this year with the Stamford delegation. Representative Caroline Simmons, who is, she's a Democrat, and she represents the middle northern part of Stamford, expressed a very strong interest in the concept that we were proposing. A number of the other Stamford delegation as well. Of the Norwalk delegation, Representative LaVielle has been a very strong supporter, as has Representative Wood. My hope is after the election is that I'm going to reach out to the remaining members of our delegation, and perhaps maybe I need to do something differently this year. What I did earlier this year didn't seem to work out quite so well, so maybe I need to take a different approach, and I'm willing to take whatever approach is needed to get results and get things done on our behalf.
Mayor?
To partially answer Mr. Anderson's question, this past weekend I had a brief discussion with Mayor Martin. We were both at an event, and we both agreed that it would be very, very advantageous for us to meet with our delegation and at least strategize on some different things, some of the things that Representative Wilms has been talking about tonight. So we can you can rest assured that that will happen, and we're going to kind of start organizing that.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think that would be extremely helpful. Thank you.
Eric?
Actually, to follow that up, Mayor Rilling, I'm not sure if this would be possible, but is it something that would be advantageous for board members or Dr. Adamowski to meet with said meeting as it comes forward? I don't know if there would be an issue or a conflict with a meeting being present.
Now, I think the first meeting was kind of like an organizational thing, and to see what we have to do to get where we want to be and how we can best strategize. And there was some open discussion about other people being involved. So I'm sure there's opportunity for board members and others with various degrees of expertise to sit down and start talking about what we want to see and how we want to get there. So, yeah.
Thank you. I look forward to hearing the reports from that.
Yeah, I'm pleased. The mayor had actually contacted Stephen and I about a week ago about setting up a meeting like that.
Right.
And I think Stamford and Norwalk is a natural place to start. It's worth noting that if you put the lowest two groups, the H and I, that's all the cities.
Yes.
That's a lot of people.
That's a majority of the votes. The way
It's
I
a
count
majority
it.
of the votes in the state is in those two groups.
Right.
But I also like the idea that, I think we overlook the possibility of finding allies among the surrounding towns who, even as it is right now, they get a pittance from the state, from their educational budgets. We complain about getting 7%, they get, 1. So, towns like that might be willing to say, you know what? If you'll give me relief from a lot of these unfunded mandates, I'm willing to forget about that. So I think there really are some possibilities here for building some coalitions that might take people in unusual directions.
Absolutely.
So let's work on that. So particularly because once Alex and his people beat the tar out of the state at the appeal level, we'll be poised with something pragmatic that we can already have a bunch of people primed to support.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Fred. Keep up the good work. All right. That was a little unusual for a board meeting, but the ECS formula is so absolutely critical to our entire situation in the city. I thought it was worth spending the time to hear from Alex and Fred. All right, next item on the agenda is the consent calendar. Tonight's consent calendar is A, approval of personnel. 2B, approval of budget transfers. This is the motion to approve. Artie moves, Eric seconds. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll proceed to a vote. All in favor of approving the consent calendar, please indicate. And that is unanimous. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is approval of amendment to NFT contract for substitute rates. I'll actually bring you up to speed on this one. This was a request that came in from the teachers union that dealt with one of the changes that we were doing at the middle school redesign and I guess at high school. And the issue is that when you go into the block scheduling, which can be 90 minutes instead of 45 minutes, the old language of the contract didn't reflect the block scheduling. So what this does is it simply adjusts it from describing the compensation based on class periods, which are now mixing apples and oranges, to minutes. So we felt that this was a fair resolution with the NFT to make sure that people were getting properly compensated for this work. So Chair would entertain a motion to approve the amendment to the contract. Eric moves. Is there a second? Heidi seconds. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll proceed to vote. All in favor, please indicate. And that is unanimous. Okay. Next item is approval of project closeout Rowayton Elementary School. Mike Barbas, this was sort of your baby for a while there, your facilities. Want to take us through it?
Yes, I mean, this is, I think, as Tom Hamilton, I think, would concur, this is really more bookkeeping than anything else, and it's just acknowledging that that project is concluded and done and accepted, and this was an addition, really was an addition is really what it was, because at the time enrollment was really surging, as we've seen in other parts of the district now, and they needed more classrooms, and they did not have a room big enough in their school for a school-wide assembly. So the gym was expanded, or new gym was built actually, and what had been the gym / cafeteria is now just a cafeteria. And a music room was built off the gym with a stage, and it's all connected. It was really well done. There was a ribbon cutting last fall. The project's been done now, well, really a good year, but I guess the closeout hadn't taken place. So this motion will make sure that the project is closed out and it's, goes into archives, and we're done, and we're moving on to our next facilities projects. Okay. So I was on the committee, the building committee for this, long before I actually was on the facilities committee, and I'm glad to see it was done, and I think we were, very appreciative of the funding from the city for it, and it's been well received by the school and the community.
Would you like to make a motion to approve?
I would like to make a motion to approve.
Okay, so moved. Eric seconds. Is there other discussion? All right, if none, all in favor of approving the project closeout for Rowayton, please indicate. That is unanimous. Thank you. Okay, next item is approval of priority outcomes for 2016-17 school year. I suggest that we take that in conjunction with item 6, approval of implementation steps, because the two, mesh right together with each other. Just to get these on for discussion, Chair would entertain a motion to approve the priority outcomes and implementation steps. Eric moves. Is there a second? Heidi seconds. Is there discussion? Dr.
I have
Avakor.
two friendly amendments, one for priority outcomes and one for implementation steps. For outcome number 2, under priority outcomes, I would suggest that we change or ensure that we have language such as this: increased percentage of all K-3 students meeting benchmarks on 2017 EOY end of year M-class DIPLs to 83%, and to have ensure cohort growth from K to 1, 1 to 2, and 2 to 3. So that will be the first amendment, so we can better monitor growth. The second amendment that I suggest is for implementation steps. That'll be for 4A. And the language will read something like this. It will say, reorganize current human resources department to create talent management capacity in the 7 dimensions of the talent model, with an emphasis on the recruitment and development of special educators. And the rationale behind that is to improve our capacity in special education so we can move forward with the correct report.
Okay, is there a second for those amendments?
Dr. Kavakor, could you actually just repeat that last amendment?
Yeah, sure. Reorganize current human resources department to create talent management capacity in the 7 dimensions of the talent model with an emphasis on the recruitment and development of special educators.
Okay, in that case, I would like to move the motion.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Is there a discussion? I'll point out that Dr. Kavakor had sent an email to the whole board a couple of days ago where he outlined in some detail the rationale behind those 2 amendments. And I know Dr. Adamowski and Dr. Kavakor worked together on coming up with some reasonable language to amend those provisions. For those in the audience, what we're doing tonight with the priority outcomes and implementation steps is taking the general outline of the strategic operating plan that we had previously approved and creating concrete steps for implementation. So there's actually 10 priority outcomes, and then there are 6 separate goals, each of which has a number of sub-goals that are really an outgrowth of the retreat that the board did 2 weeks ago, so that we can start taking that plan and turning it into a concrete reality. And the idea is that we would do this at our retreat every year for the 3-year plan. This is the first installment on the 3-year strategic operating plan. We'll do the same thing next year, the same time of the year after that. And we will get feedback on what we're doing on these things. An important thing about the priority outcomes is that the priority outcomes are all numerically based. They set specific numerical targets, which, as any good scientist knows, that, if you can't measure something, you really can't evaluate whether you're accomplishing anything. So by setting very concrete, numerical goals, it gives us a real good way of tracking what we're doing. And a year from now, we can look, okay, well, we met some of the goals, we didn't meet other of the goals. It allows us to focus on the things that may need more attention. So we actually had a very good retreat. There was a lot of participation by the board members. I'm pleased that there's a number of things in these outcomes and implementation steps that the board itself initiated in addition to the staff recommendations. So it was a real collaborative effort. I'm happy to support it as amended. Yes?
Thank you, Mr. Lyons. We've been talking about the achievement gap for years, and it's really refreshing to see now that you have outcomes and you have goals and how to reach those outcomes. And I'm sure a process where you're going to be able to measure those outcomes periodically to see if you're meeting them. So I want to congratulate the board as well. I think it's a job well done. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so technically we first have to vote on Dr. Kravakor's amendment. Okay, so is there any other discussion on the amendment? Hearing none, we'll proceed to vote on the amendment. All in favor of the amendment, please indicate. And that is unanimous. Thank you. Now we'll proceed to a vote on the main complement. One thing I did want to note in terms of the plans themselves and the implementation steps, one of the things that the board really strongly emphasized in the retreat was a need to dramatically improve communication with the teachers, communication with parents, with the community at large. And the administration has signed on to that completely. And so we are actually looking at, as part of our communications objectives, actually adding a couple of staff positions that would focus exclusively on communications. In addition to Brenda Williams, who's our communications director. She would head up that operation. And one of our communications objectives is to implement bi-weekly school messenger newsletters to all teachers and all parents beginning by January 1 of 2017 concerning district improvement plans, new redesigned programs, and student achievement and staff accomplishments. We are sensitive to the fact that there have been complaints about lack of communication, and sometimes that has been correct. I think we have an awful lot of stuff going on, and sometimes there's a tendency to focus on the substance and let the communications follow. But the reality is, good communications is part of how you make the implementation work. So I think, a number of members of the board, I think just about every member of the board, had pushed for that, and it is going to be implemented, and that's also a measurable objective. We expect those newsletters to be going out to all of our teachers and parents on a bi-weekly basis starting in January. And that's another one of the things we're going to measure. Anything else? All right. Okay, we'll proceed to a vote. All in favor of approving the priority outcomes and the implementation steps for 16-17, please indicate. And that is unanimous. Thank you. Next item is approval of board workshop schedule. This is listed as 5-7. This is a list of topics that would come up at our workshops starting in October of this year, running through the end of the school year in June. Of course, this is going to be subject to some flexibility. If topics come up at different times, we may move the schedule around, but by approving this, we at least give ourselves a set of target objectives that we're going to work on. And it's pretty much a comprehensive following down of the things that we've set as our objectives. October is School Intervention Support Special Education Policy and Procedures Manual. We may move that around a little bit depending on Dr. Kreviker's committee work, but that will be a topic. Then we're going to go over the school master plan recommendations, which the Facilities Committee and particularly I know Mike Barbas is working furiously on juggling about 16 different things at the same time on that. The talent management status. Then in January, we're going to work on the budget. February, food service plan and recommendations, which is going to do everything from how we provide the service to, hopefully improving the quality of the food. March, expansion of summer learning, the 504 policy and procedures manual. In April, we want to look at the academically talented program, see how that can be brought up to date. And leadership development for the school system. May will be a update on the implementation of the CREC report recommendations. So that's where we want to see, okay, we've got the special agreement with the city, thank you, Mr. Mayor, to support us with several $1 million of additional funding. We're going to track how we're doing on those improvements. And then in June, we'll have our first discussion forum with the School Governance Council co-chairs. One of the requirements of the new School Governance Council policy is that once a year we want to have a board get together with the co-chairs of all of our school governance councils, see how they're doing, get feedback from them on what we can do to help them, et cetera. So it's a good list that shows a lot of activity, spreads it out enough to make it somewhat manageable. But this is another step in implementing what we just voted for. Any comments? Eric?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I definitely appreciate the fact that this is a nice framework for us to start with, but alone in our policy committee meeting this evening, there were a number of wonderful topics we began discussing, including two that really stood out that might even be their own workshop items on their standalone. And I defer to my chair, Ms. Keys, on that as well. But I definitely think that, some of those topics, particularly one that was a good period of our focus during discussions, might lend itself to a topic. So, and just understanding the process of how we would do that in the future would be helpful if we wanted to add a topic.
I think the thing to do is to, if a committee thinks that something is substantive enough that we need a work session on it, bring it to the attention of the executive committee.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll talk about it with Dr. Adamowski, and if it's important, we'll reorganize things or double up with something else and we'll get it done.
Thank you.
Okay. All right.
Do you want to talk about the policy meeting?
Yeah, I just wanted to make a comment, if we can possibly delay the special education policy and procedures manual workshop until November or December, just to give the ad hoc special education committee the opportunity to discuss it and have additional input from parents in the community.
Let's see. And I think, Mike, as we discussed, you know, we have a lot of ground still to cover for the facility, so I'm not sure that November 1 date as of today is realistic, but, you know, we're a little ways away from November 1, although maybe not that far away. But, you know, you might want to rejigger a little bit, and I think the superintendent did say, you know, maybe it could be flipped with the December meeting, but, you know, you don't maybe have to decide that tonight, but I think right now, I think that's maybe more realistic, although Tom Hamilton and I do have a meeting tomorrow morning with Alan Lowe to go over timing, and as much as we might not be ready on November 1, just because of the way the city timing works for the capital budget and everything, we might have to have something by November 1. I don't know. So maybe I'll follow up with the two of you after that meeting.
Okay.
And we have
Like
a
I
better
said,
sense.
This approval is of a set of goals. This is flexible. We can move it around as needed to make sure that we have the time needed to address those issues.
One thing you might want to consider tonight is to just make the decision to move the Special Ed Policy and Procedures Manual to November and assume that we would be moving the Phase 1 facility recommendations someplace else a little later in the year. That would give us time to plan for both October and staff time to plan for both October and November.
All right, well, why don't we, let's see, did somebody move to adopt?
No, we did not, Mr. Chair, I just asked a question.
I'm sorry, first Shirley and then Heidi.
Can we add with that, the language that would say that we reserve the right to amend or these workshops so it's not in concrete, because all these different things are coming up. If we decide a topic that comes up that's really hot that we want to put in there,
Yeah.
we're not held to this.
Yeah, I think, Eric, you were going to move to approve. Maybe you can make that part of your motion to approve this, but to acknowledge that it's subject to amendment, you know, to reflect, you know, changing circumstances.
Definitely, thank you, Mr. Chair, and I do appreciate that, Ms. Mosby, having the language in there would be helpful.
Okay, so I'll treat that as a motion.
Oh.
Motion to approve with that language.
Yes, you can accept it as a motion, Mr. Chair.
All right, give me a second. Who wants the second?
I just had a comment.
Yvelle, second? No, you cannot. Yes, of course you can.
Raising my hand politely. I just want to piggyback on both what Shirley and Eric just mentioned. If we could have just some flexibility on this, I think it's important. We've discussed this time and again, but we want to get this right. We don't want to rush through it. I think having these guidelines and these dates are important because we can move forward on it, but also having that flexibility if we need to tweak it or if we need to change it and get it done right. I think that's the key to make sure that we get it done.
Now, Eric, maybe you as a friendly amendment can accept Dr. Adamowski's proposal to move the Special Education Procedures Manual from October to November. And let's move Phase 1 master plan recommendations from November and December to December, knowing it may be subject to.
Well, I'm just saying, you know, at the end of the day, this isn't our choice. It's the city's timeline with the budget and the capital budget and approvals through their land use committee, the full council. You know, I'll know more tomorrow. I think we'll have a better feel, or maybe Tom will.
Okay, well, you know, the executive committee can make further changes to this as needed.
Yeah.
So maybe we'll just do the special ed one for now?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, what I was going to suggest is we would officially move the special ed item, and then maybe if we can put some sort of language or parentheses next to the master plan facility topics, because that specifically is going to have some movement to it because of the ramifications with the city's timing. Since that is a specifically hot topic, I think that would be advantageous to specifically point out when we do make this public, along with the overall addendum at the bottom that would state that all items are subject to change or additions.
Okay. All right, that is the amended motion. Is there a second? Shirley seconds. Sure, I got this written down for the secretary. Okay. Any further discussion? All right, hearing none, we'll proceed to a vote on Eric's motion. All in favor, please indicate. And that is unanimous, thank you. All right, moving right along, approval of the recognition of Hispanic Heritage Month, September 15 to October 15, 2016. There's a resolution in the packet. Is there a motion to adopt the resolution? Shirley moves, Eric seconds. Any discussion on the motion? All right, hearing none. All in favor of adopting the motion to make September 15 to October 15 Hispanic Heritage Month? All in favor, please indicate. That is unanimous, thank you. The next item on the agenda is approval of recognition of ADHD Awareness Month. There is a resolution in the packet. Is there a motion to approve? Heidi moves, Eric seconds. Is there discussion on the motion? Eric?
Mr. Chair, yeah, I do just want to actually bring both of the topics together really quickly and say I'm very happy to see these moving forward. I do want to point out that this was a discussion I had with you briefly about one topic I do feel was not quite honored yet, and I do plan on bringing forward a proposal to have that discussed as well, which would be LGBT History Month in October. I am very happy and proud that we are celebrating these two, these points of recognition in the city, and look forward to, continuing to diversify all of our focuses within the school systems.
Okay, thank you.
The only other comment is just a reminder that the two documents that Mr. Spar had discussed earlier will be put on the website.
Fair to say we can do that, Dr. Adamowski, on the documents that we were going to put on the website?
Absolutely, based upon Mr. Spar's suggestion.
Okay.
Is that necessary to amend the motion then?
No, I don't think so. I think that's an administrative decision.
We'll take care of it.
Yeah.
Shirley?
Yeah, I was going to say, if that's the case, then, since you said you might not amend it, but with the language or something that would say that it's subject to going through the normal process, because we set up a process of when we receive information to put on a website. This was a few months ago, and just say that I'm okay with it, but as long as we follow the process that is necessary, because we have to try to stay consistent with what we put out there, and if everyone comes up and asks for something to be posted.
Correct, we can't post everything that anybody
Right,
asks
so,
for.
yeah, so it's okay with, as long as we go through the process, the normal process. And, and that, I believe, goes to Brenda. I think you guys have a process. We had this a few months ago, took the time to put the process in place, so might as well follow it.
Thank you for the clarification.
Okay. All right, any other discussion? Hearing none, we'll proceed to a vote. All in favor of approving the resolution, please indicate. And that is unanimous. Okay, so moving on to information and reports. First is August 2016 monthly financial report. Mr. Hamilton.
Good evening. I have provided you with the first financial report on the new fiscal year that started July 1st. And at this point, as of the end of August, we are 16.7% of the way through the fiscal year, but of course, at the end of August, none of the way yet through the school year. And you can see from the report, in total, we spent 2.6% of the budget as of the end of August. That is where we would expect to be at this point, given the fact that most of our expenses are tied up in salaries and benefits and so on for teachers and other employees who work during the school year. Couple highlights to note. First, you may, if you look at the report, you may notice something looks slightly out of whack, and that's as it should. You go to the salary lines, you'll see the month-to-date actual for the month of August was $6.4 million, but the year-to-date actual was only $2,840,000. So you may say, well, how could we have spent $6.4 million in August when we've only spent year-to-date $2.4 million? There is a reason for it, and the reason is this. Our 10-month employees, under their collective bargaining agreements, are entitled to, if they want, they're entitled to request that their pay be spread out over 12 months rather than 10 months. And that's, so many of our teachers elect to get what we call summer pays, July and August pay. It's paid in July and August, but it really represents compensation for services that were rendered last school year.
Oh, I see.
And so that has to be booked back to last year as well. And the controller's office does that reversal and books that all to the month of July even though the payments are made in July and August. So that's the reason why you notice that there's what appears to be an anomaly, if you will, in the wage accounts. Other, I guess just a couple other highlights, and bottom line, at this point through the fiscal year, it's hard to really read too much into the numbers because there just isn't enough history here. Property services, you'll see that we've spent about 15% of the budget, and again, that's expected because that represents items generally in facilities for annual maintenance contracts on things like elevators and boilers and those kinds of things. You'll also see the equipment line is 24% expended as of the end of August. And if you look into the detail, what you'll see is that that is driven primarily by instructional software. And again, that's from the curriculum department where they've purchased software licenses for the entire year and made those payments in the summer. And the last one is other objects, which is a minor item, but that represents primarily dues for the board's membership in
CAVE and
CAVE
stuff
and,
like
and
that.
other organizations.
Okay. All
So I
right.
think that's about it, unless there's any questions.
Any questions, Mr. Hamilton? No? Okay, looking good. Thank you, Tom. All right, next is
Minute?
board and, well, the minutes come after the information section. So next is committee and representative reports. We'll start with Dr. Crevecoeur.
I'm looking to secure the first date for the ad hoc special ed committee. Most likely it will be October 11th or October 25th.
All right, thank you.
And one more comment, I'm sorry.
Yeah, please.
And going forward, we plan to have the meeting on either the second Tuesday of every month or this fourth Tuesday of every month.
Okay. Good. And your first topic's going to be the manual.
Yes.
All right, Brian, what's on the?
Finance will meet at the regular scheduled time next week, Wednesday. Actually, we did move that back to accommodate some to 5:30. Moreover, in this year, I'll be looking to move that meeting between the workshop meeting and the business meeting for relevance. We established this fourth Wednesday before we had these workshop meetings come up, and I think it makes sense to have the meeting kind of fall in between that. So I'll be looking to coordinate with Heidi, Eric, and Mike on what might work for us in between those 2 weeks.
Good.
That's it.
So Heidi, you still got a full jammed agenda there, policy?
We do. I first of all want to thank Brenda and Frank. Frank is going to be our liaison, I should say, for policy. He's working closely with Brenda. And I want to thank both of you for really working hard. We have a lot going on. I want to thank Shirley, Eric, and Mike. Policy's hopping. It's busy, as it always is. But which I'm really happy about, we have a really strong group of policy leaders here. We're working together, building a community, so to speak, with policy, and we're all in agreement on a lot of things that we're going to be discussing. We put together like a fall and winter and spring, large-scale policies and short-scale policies that we need to work on. So we have a lot coming down the pike. Our normal meetings are usually the first Tuesday of every month. We did have our meeting tonight prior to our board meeting. Our next meeting will be our first meeting will be in October, prior to board meeting at 6 o'clock, usually about 6, and we'll continue working on this. So we have a lot of policies that we're working on, tweaking, changing, and adding new policies.
Okay, thank you. Negotiations continues working away. As I indicated, I gave a report in executive session at the last board meeting where we went into detail on all the contract negotiations. One contract has settled, that's with the nurses. We're just putting that into final language to bring to the board for approval. The other contracts are at various stages of negotiation, but all of them have exchanged proposals and are moving forward. And I will keep the board periodically updated in the exec session as developments occur with those contracts.
Mike, can I interrupt for 1 second?
Yes,
I'm
please.
sorry, if I could just add some of the things that we're going to be working on. Board of Ed remote access, we discussed this a while back in policy, but we're revisiting that again, 21st century, discussing how we can make that work. So that's one. Wellness committee we've been working on for quite some time, but the wellness committee is actually still working on it, so they'll be bringing it back to policy, but that's a work in progress that will probably take at least several more meetings to complete. Enrollment, school choice, student transfers, homeschool instruction. There's a slew of policies that we'll be working on that's going to take some time.
Okay, good, thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Mike, anything else to add on facilities?
Well,
We just talked about it a little bit.
Yes and no, but I think it's deserving. It's an important enough topic that I think I should give a summary of kind of where we are, because this has been dragging for a long time. We haven't had a public meeting. I've been in some discussions with the members of the committee via email. We're kind of waiting for some things to come together to have a public meeting, but I think we're probably going to have a public meeting sooner rather than later, just to kind of take stock of where we are. But the most important thing I think everyone should realize is we did spend, $500,000 doing a facilities utilization study, hiring professionals, Silver Petroselli, that are architects who've done work on some of our other buildings, some of our existing buildings. They've done over 400 projects. And the engineers, Malone and McBroom, that did our demographic work. And this was presented to the Facilities Committee, to the Board of Ed, and to the Common Council over the course of the first quarter of this calendar year. And the gist of those studies is that we are short 750 seats, and that's going to grow to over 1,000 seats by 2025. So we're short capacity. We've got 400 kids roughly and 15 portables that are nearing the end of their design life. So we can't just not do anything about this. At the same time, some decisions that were made decades ago, if you look in South Norwalk, the northern part of South Norwalk, all those kids are allocated to neighborhood schools. But south of Martin Luther King Boulevard, we've got about 1,400 students from pre-K through 8th grade that are getting bused all over the city to 8 different schools, Wolfpick, Cranberry, you name it, Kendall. And those kids are almost, as a group, 1,400 pre-K through 8th grade. Almost 90% of them are on free and reduced lunch. So and they're 92% a minority. So this is a group that really needs attention, that really needs help, and all the science says you're better off in a neighborhood school. So we've been committing that, the one part of Norwalk that doesn't have a neighborhood school is South Norwalk. And so we looked at sites, and our consultants looked at sites. They looked at sites all over the city. And really the only parcel in South Norwalk that was big enough is the Nathaniel Ely site. Now, unfortunately, when they did this study, they thought that they couldn't use the existing building there. There were some restrictions on it, and so they proposed building a new building, which would be just pre-K through 5, and would use a lot of the open space there. I think both this committee and the community all thought that was not the most logical plan, and we've been looking at, is there a way to incorporate the current building? We did get a report at the end of August telling us what we would have to do to try to, if legally, to incorporate that building, and so we have that piece of information now. We do need to figure out, there's some restrictions on open space. That's a little more complicated, and we can't really figure out the open space issue until we have a plan to show the government, both the state and the federal government, that we're kind of trying to work on that to get a plan, but it's a chicken and egg story because we got to spend money to do that. We need the consent at the end of the day from the city, and to work that all together has taken us a long time to get everyone on the same page, and I don't think we're still there yet. So while we've put some funding aside and the mayor has now signed a contract for the architect to do this work, it has actually not taken place. We thought it was underway, but it has not been underway. So that needs to be worked on. I've been approached by a number of people, and I am going to give a tour of the site tomorrow afternoon to some community leaders that reached out to me to kind of try to understand what the issues are. So we'll do that. I met one of the Common Council members from that part of town before our meetings tonight to discuss that common council member wants some information, which I'm going to try to gather. Some of it I have, some of it I don't. So that issue is, whatever, in the works, but is not as far along as I think we were hoping it would be at this stage. So that, I think, is probably, that facilities-wise, the most relevant. We do have 3 schools that are existing that are in bad shape, that need to be what they call renovate as new. That would be Columbus, Jefferson, and West Rocks. Those schools would be closed for a year, and those students would have to go elsewhere while these buildings were completely overhauled. So that needs to take place. In order for that to take place, we need some place for these kids to go. We're thinking one of our expansions would initially be used as what's called swing space for those 3 projects, and then eventually could be used. So we have some big decisions to be made. None have been made, but there are a lot of moving pieces here, and we really need to come up with a plan that everyone can get on board. And it's time is of the essence. At the same time, it takes a long time to get everyone on board. So that's where we are in facilities. And as I said, I think once we get a couple more pieces of information, we should be having a meeting in short order.
Okay, thanks. Shirley?
Mike, what kind of outreach are you doing for bringing a lot of those people into,
At this point, really, we haven't done any outreach because we don't have any information, and this is the meeting I had tonight with this common council member. I was like, he goes, well, let's see the plans. And I'm like, well, we can't, it's a chicken and egg story. I can't do plans until I get your consent to spend some money and to do some plans. So we haven't done that because we've been waiting to have something concrete to say, well, look, this is what we're proposing. We don't have anything to propose.
but, maybe something of a meeting or something of just getting, people to come in and they might have some type of proposal that can help with the situation. And, how we always say, try to keep people involved.
Right.
We're talking about bringing the school down in South Norwalk area. I think if they feel involved or more embraced, they can put out more ideals.
And that's kind of what I did talk about with this common council member. The problem really is that it's not like there's a long list of options. According to the professionals that we hired and that we paid money to, they looked at a bunch of sites and they've ruled everything out. So really the only site in their eyes that was viable was the Ely site. I did, being in real estate, I did some extra work myself, commercial properties I knew were for sale. And I kind of did some research, and I had someone do me a favor on the commercial side, and there really were no sites big enough. We did have a meeting this summer with the mayor and the city's general counsel to see, to kind of investigate kind of the concept of eminent domain, if that made any sense. And there is the old Norwalk Community College, which has been renovated to see, would that be even viable? And the general counsel knew that owner and did have a dialogue with him, and he's got leases and so forth. It's not a viable site. It's not an option for us. So I think, we have, all the options, both professionally and a bit more informally, have been, that where there's any space. We need, according to the consultants, to build a new school in Connecticut today, and for what we're talking about, you need 10 acres, and you're gonna have to build a structure that's roughly 100,000 square feet. So, that's not easy to come by. But I did, in this discussion this afternoon with this common council member, I said, look, I'm happy to have a meeting, but to have a meeting with nothing tangible is that the right way to go about it? And I'm waiting to kind of hear back to see, I said, think about it. We're happy to do it. But it might be kind of frustrating for people to say, to just kind of talk in these very broad concepts with no specifics, when really there are no other sites. These professional engineers and architects have looked at, I think, a total of 20 city-owned properties, including parks.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, if you still have something.
No, I was just going to say, maybe although we're in the process of this, of just trying to have some kind of meeting or something where people just come in, although you don't have a plan that's, on paper, but just to get a general idea of feel of how people are, in that area. And then to make your point, to people. And that way you can reach out to, because the community is more than just a few individuals. There's a lot of different stakeholders in the community.
Right, and we did, if you recall, and I think you were at one of them at the strategic operating plan meetings, there were, the topics varied at each one of them, but I think both the one it was definitely touched on, although I don't think we got very far at the South Norwalk Public Library.
It was touched on, and a lot of the people in the area felt that meeting was 9 o'clock in the morning. They couldn't get there to really,
Well, and there was, I will tell you, it was not as big a group, but at the Nathaniel Ely, there was a strategic operating plan meeting there. And initially, there was really no one there. And so we kind of looked at each other and wondered, should we have, the superintendent was like, should we have a meeting? And in the end, some people did come later, including several people who I would consider, leaders of the South Norwalk community. And we did have it was informal, but a big dialogue about, things that were wanted in terms of a community room, different things. One of the people who was there was Deirdre Davis, who's the head of the tenants of Rudner Court. And it was a really frank and good discussion, actually. But I think I go back once again to, we haven't had a lot of concrete. I think one thing that would be valuable in a meeting, even without a concrete proposal or proposals, is there are two issues that have been going around that I think need to be nipped in the bud about a South Norwalk school. And as I understand it from some people, this is why there's opposition to just the concept, is that one, it would be kind of this dumping ground. And two, it would not get the resources that other schools would get. So one, as we're operating under student-based budgeting, every school is going to get the same amount of money per student. Every elementary school, every middle school, the dollar figure per student varies by the level, but each school is going to get funded the same way by the same amount. So this inequity isn't possible just because of the way the formula works. Secondly, under the state's racial balance laws and the special, I forget what it's called, the legal agreement.
Consent decree.
Consent decree that Norwalk agreed to, which the standards are even stricter. We have to have racially balanced schools, and if we don't, the state's going to come after us. So it can't be just a South Norwalk, school of African American Latino students. There has to be a white component there, or the state is going to have a problem with that. So the way to do that, obviously, is to have a magnet school, which is what the superintendent had been proposed. And I think I won't speak for him, but I think in the meetings we've had, including at the retreat, it was made very clear that this would be a new school. This would be, if anything, our, shining star. It would be as far as you could get then from a, whatever. And I hate to use the word dumping ground school, but that's kind of how it's being labeled. It would be quite the opposite from, I think, his vision. And if you heard at the retreat, one of the concepts that I proposed, I guess is the best word, would be that we would move actually Columbus from, as I mentioned, it's one of our worst shaped schools. It's our oldest school, built in 1938. We would move Columbus to this new site. And Columbus already has been approved by us to add 6-8. So you'd have an up and running magnet school, which is really what you need to build, because that way you can get a broad mix of students, and it would be a pre-K through 8th grade school. Obviously, that's a bigger building, but that's what they're going to do at Columbus on a smaller scale, and they'll just use the same administration, same teachers, that same community, and just make it larger.
Just move them over to Nathan.
And then it's an up and running, it's an up and running magnet school that people know, that have faith in, and want to attend. And I think we heard from the superintendent, some of the Columbus had some really, in certain areas, outstanding SBAC scores. It's a known entity that people have faith in and would want to send their kids to. So, and then the old Columbus school could conceptually, once it was renovated as new, could become a neighborhood school. So I think it would be a win-win, but obviously, if people don't want there to be a school at Ely, which we've definitely been hearing from certain circles, we can move this concept to another site.
And I believe that you should try to get everyone involved. That's in the area where the school is going to go. And one more thing, I know we said we have school-based budgeting, out there, but there is a conditioning clause in there that if certain schools are not doing what they need to do, then it's taken over by central office. So if we, that's something, a possibility that's out there too. If you get a bunch of kids or students in a school and they're not meeting that grade, you know, then the central office can step in, because that's in the, we put that in.
I know, but I think what I was talking about more was dollars, Shirley.
Oh, okay, well.
You know, that the dollars you wouldn't be, it's not like you'd be getting less dollars than other schools.
Well, no,
There is
it's,
equity.
but it's not the dollar issue. I'm just talking about some stuff that I'm hearing out there
Sure.
as well.
Yeah, no, it's
Not
good
the
to discuss it.
The dollar issue is the fact that they like to have some ownership of their schools. If they cannot go in there and have a say about teachers and stuff like that, like everyone else, you know, that defeats the purpose of them having their own, you know, school-based, school running on their own with their own, you know, where they can go in and hire their teachers, you know.
Right, but they would have a school governance council that would have that authority. All of the
Right.
schools, including this one, would have that.
But the clause or that provision in that school government council says that if they're not doing well, central office
Right,
is
so,
step in and take it over.
So we would have to have a extended period of time, many years, where the school was low performing and not improving, right, under local governance, in order to warrant district intervention and support. So it's both, it's intervention and support. But at that point, you have to conclude that, you know, the folks in the school who I'm sure would want to do better, haven't been able to, don't know how to, need help in doing so. But this would be, you know, my sense would be in a new school, you would not even consider that for the first 5 years until you had some track record of school performance. Now, you know, if we were to move an existing magnet, which is considered a high-performing school, which is considered one of our most popular, you know, schools in the city, and if we were to designate, let's say, 50% of it for students from the neighborhood who could walk to school, I think that's an entirely different situation where you're talking about a school that is high performing and very well positioned to continue to be high performing and improve even further. So, you know, again, there are lots of little reasons in any decision not to do something. But there's always one or two very big reasons to do it, and then you try to work the little things out.
Terrell?
Mike, I'm just wondering, well, actually everyone, if it might be beneficial to meet with District B just to discuss, to have beginning discussions on the school, what people are thinking, just to kind of, so people aren't just sort of hearing bits and pieces, but we're kind of going out to the community to discuss the possibilities and maybe to listen to what they have to say?
Sure. I mean, the mayor and I had talked about in this summer saying, you know, we should do something, you know, early this fall. I think we've been kind of waiting for, our thinking had been, we would have, you know, there are two legal determinations that we really need, one of which we have, one which we still do not have, so that we could go to the community with something concrete instead of just saying, well, you know, this is kind of what we want to do, but we, you know, at this point, we don't even really know. We have to incorporate 100 under this determination from this legal determination from the state. We have to incorporate 99 preschool children in this new building. Then, you know, we want to do K through 8. If you have a middle school, you require certain sports facilities. There are tennis courts there, which the city has put, allocated money to resurface, and some donor from grassroots wants to add more tennis courts. You know, we need to figure out, can that all work there? Right. So the idea had been, let's see a provisional plan, and then we could go to the community with that. We don't have that at this point.
But even just going and just even saying that and discussing it, because I think people are aware of the open space issue that's at Ely, and some of the council members they've kind of identified other areas. So maybe if everybody's talking, everybody's sort of on the same page as opposed to having conversations here and there. I just think that would be, I can't speak for everyone in District B, but I think that would be appreciated.
Yep, okay. Eric, see what we can do.
I thank you all for your comments. Mike, thank you for this presentation. It's been very informative, especially around the South Norwalk School, and the work that you've done is very admirable. One thing, there are a couple things I just want to point out. As far as moving forward with the Sono school, there's, I think, a couple things we should be mindful of as we're looking at it. One being that District B wouldn't be the only district impacted by it, as it's going to be a magnet school, and it's going to be drawing from a lot of different areas. Two, I am a member of the District B community. I am also, not as active as I think some would like me to be at the District B committee meetings. However, I think that, we have a wonderful group of leaders there, but it isn't fully representative of the entire South Norwalk community. So I think as we move this forward, I think we should really be, impactful in our outreach, that we use a piece of it, yes, the District B, elected officials and organizers, but also the folks that might not be involved there yet in other community aspects and leadership roles throughout the South Norwalk and larger community. Because I know that our representation there, frankly, I will be blunt, we don't have as much Latino representation at the District B Democratic Committee, which is the largest, gathering of interested minds at, the South Norwalk level. So I absolutely encourage us being able to meet with them. I do understand your concerns with issues being vague and not having full answers. It is interesting to hear from Ms. Harris that there are some other suggestions that potential council members have come up with. Not knowing that you've received any of those is slightly concerning, but I'll be interested to see how this moves forward. Sure.
It shouldn't be concerning. That's why I'm saying everyone should be at the table having the same conversations. To your point of maybe not just having it be District B, that's actually a good point, and not necessarily just Democrats. It can be everybody. So maybe we have a widespread meeting and just invite, make sure the representatives on whatever side are included in the conversations.
Yeah, I think you don't
It's
want
not
to just meet
political,
with the
it's just
political
being open
district
and
committee. You want to have an
honest.
open meeting.
Yes.
And just one more thing, and I'll let it go. And that's what I've been hearing out in the community, is that they don't feel that they're at the table with anything. Just sitting there hearing and just putting it out there, so.
Well, but there, just so you can tell people, there's been no table to sit at because we haven't had anything concrete.
But there's been meetings with people, like you said, particularly groups like tomorrow, you're gonna have a meeting.
That's some people called me.
Right.
That just happened in the last couple days.
But there's been meetings out there, so, and they're, they're, so.
But Mike, no, it's not a coming down. I don't want to turn this into a
Yes.
political thing. I just think it should be, whether it's Democrat, Republican, whatever, just have the conversation. I don't think anybody's pointing fingers.
No, and I'm not saying that. I'm just saying the reason why, I know some people said, oh, decisions have been made. Well, no decisions have been made because you have to have information to have decisions. You have to have a plan to say, does this work or not? We haven't had a plan. And, I know there are some folks that think that there are some other sites that would be should be viable. But, we were told from the get-go, they looked at these sites, they weren't viable. And in fact, as chair of the facilities committee, I wrote an email to the head guy and I was like, you got to answer these questions for me because, you kind of flew through all this stuff. And I said, well, how is this and this site not viable? And I actually had forgotten he had emailed me back a 2-page email kind of going through all this stuff, why certain things were done, weren't done, and why certain sites were viable, weren't viable. And so, what the meeting I had today was like, well, can I see that? I never had anything concrete, so I'm gonna go back. That's one of the things I'm gonna work on, is to go back to this firm and say, look, why did you rule out this site? I know you said it wasn't big enough, it didn't have this, didn't have that, but, can you give me something substantive? Because I think people in the South Norwalk community need to hear that because they're thinking logically, well, why are you going here? Why not do a school, rebuild Ben Franklin? But they said, emphatically, that was not an option. But we need to have that, and I'm really thinking we have a community meeting, and this guy should be there. He's a professional, and he can explain why it's not viable, in technical terms that make it clear that it's just not, And this guy knows, he's done 400 school projects. He knows how this funding works with the state. I worked with him at Rowayton School. I can't say I love the guy, because I disagreed with him on how certain things were done, but some of it was, this is the way regulations are for the way you build schools, and this was the way funding was, and da-da-da-da, and, you know, he knows, what do I know about building a school? I don't know squat.
Eric? Just really quickly, I do appreciate that point because as people throughout Norwalk, both in South Norwalk and outside, the question of why isn't a space viable, you know, it kind of got a little old for me to say, oh, well, the experts said so. So I think that having a presentation on that is going to be so helpful in helping folks understand why we've come back to this decision and why this is our best opportunity to make it happen.
Yep.
To really get all the stakeholders from across Norwalk with simple information that I'm sure the experts can deliver in, you know, lay terms. So I appreciate that effort because that is a big issue to why does it have to be here instead of here? The experts said here, no, but we don't know why.
Right.
And I don't know why. I trust that in their expertise that it's not a viable option, but having to be able to give that piece of information to the community will be very helpful in our efforts to continue to move this forward and get back to the reasons as to why we're doing it.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I just want to say, I know this wasn't a topic for discussion, and I just wanted just to get it started, that's all. And, you know, I know we can probably have more conversation on this, you know, in the future, but, you know, I felt there was a good opportunity for us to start getting things out there so we can start moving ahead with having people involved and try to, you know, because we, like you said, we keep hearing things behind the scene, but no one's stepping up in front. So, so I apologize if I dominated.
No, we needed to have this conversation.
Yes,
I'm glad we did.
It had to be had, and and I know it was on the agenda, but it had to be had, yes.
Okay. Mr. Kasimis, any report from curriculum, sports, or your other liaison
We
positions?
just, all we have is a curriculum meeting that's scheduled for next Tuesday, September 27th.
Okay, good. All right, any other reports from liaisons or anything like that, Eric?
Just really quickly, I had a meeting towards the beginning of the summer with Norwalk Acts, just to kind of touch base of where we are. Unfortunately, kind of through the summer, we fell off, so that is on my radar to reconnect with them, to get them re-engaged and really plug back into what's going on with them and, you know, work with the superintendent to make sure that we're one ship again, as we plan to be. As far as the PTOC, I've been having communications with them. They are just rolling out their new year, and I know that finance team was working with them on some really fantastic stuff and being very helpful to the PTOC in moving forward some of their financial housing, and I'm sure everything looks good for them. Otherwise than that, are we on to other reports, just like little?
Yeah, we can, we'll go to board member announcements, and we'll start with you and then work our way around. I'm sorry,
I
did you
just
have
have a
something?
question, yeah, Artie, I'm sorry if I didn't hear you, but is the meeting, the curriculum meeting, will that be at 7?
No, it'll be, I believe, 5:30 or 6?
Happy to 5:30.
5:30. Okay, thank you.
Guys, killing us with 5:30.
All right, Eric?
Well, back to just little nuggets of wonderful things going on in the NPS community. I did attend the Jefferson PTO food truck fundraiser. It was my second year attending. There were a huge amount of very happy children walking around with goldfish from one of the new booths there. I'm not sure how happy the parents were going to be when they have these, you know, hordes of goldfish going home with them, but it was an amazing experience, and you know, a big shout out to the folks that made that happen. Really walking in there and seeing the community together as it was breathtaking, and it really was representative of what we do here. And seeing also Nick Brophy there really wonderfully interacting with the families, it was fantastic. So walked out of there like on a cloud, but then was weighed down by the food that I ate. So.
All right. Anything else?
Tell them about your oyster.
Any other comments?
Oh, I will also note, thank you, actually, Ms. Mosby. I did, both myself and Mr. Kasimis.
Yes.
And the mayor, I guess. I'm specifically referring to board members. I apologize, Mr. Mayor. We had the honor of being a part of the Norwalk Oyster Festival's oyster eating competition. This was a first year for me. I wasn't really sure what I was getting into. They were quite warm. by the time I got to them. I am proud to say I did complete them all. I came in roughly 4th place, which I'm very grateful I did not move on to the next round because another 10 oysters. Not sure I would have done in that heat, but I do appreciate being able to represent the board and getting to work with Mr. Simmons and the mayor and experience something that I'm not likely to experience again anytime soon. So
I heard McQuaid won again.
he did. It was actually quite interesting because there was a lumberjack kind of dark horse that was pulled in from nowhere, and he thought he had it, but there was one still in a cup at the end, so McQuaid did walk away with the trophy. So big congrats to Rick McQuaid.
All right. Ryan?
Yeah, this is my second year into being on the board. I just want to recognize Dr. Adamowski and the staff to what I perceive as being a great start to the school year. I don't think we're over communicating just yet, but I want to say that I want to say that for the volume of complaints year over year is like way down, and we only hear the bad news a lot of times, and there's a lot less bad news, and I think that's good news. So thanks to you and your team.
Thank you. Shirley?
I just want to say that on Saturday, I went to the Brian McMahon High School Celebration of Sound. I attended that, and I wanted to give a special thanks out to the Brian McMahon High School Band, Parent Association, and Ron Suchi for inviting the board. Watching those bands out there and seeing our kids, it was extremely amazing. The Norwalk High School Band and Brian McMahon Band both played, and just to see those students out there, and to see that we have individuals in our school that have such, their talents are just, you can't even put words to it. And I really enjoyed it, I appreciate it, and I encourage more parents to get their kids involved with the arts and music and everything, because we have extremely talented kids here in Norwalk, extremely. And I'm very pleased to see them come out. And they did a wonderful job, and I just wanted to at least give them a shout out.
Okay. Sherelle and then Nivelle.
I'd like to thank Dr. Lynn Toper for her, just for being a breath of fresh air in Norwalk for the SPED department. She's been everywhere. She's been at Briggs, she's been at the South Norwalk Library, and then she had the presentation last night. And I think, even some of the naysayers are cautiously optimistic. So I think her knowledge and just her rapport is just, it's a breath of fresh air. And I think people are believing that Dr. Adamowski and his cabinet are behind SPED, and that's been a long time coming. So I just want to thank everyone involved, and particularly Dr. Toper and Dr. Adamowski for bringing her here.
Okay. Yvelle?
Three quick things. First, I echo Mr. Anderson's comments about the Jefferson Food Truck Festival. It was just, the only thing that comes to mind is just a nice representation of community in the parking lot. It was just a beautiful sight to see. Second is I really enjoyed seeing the Norwalk Early Childhood Center come to life last week with the ribbon cutting. Seeing them in the classrooms and seeing the facility is just encouraging for the future. Not just for those 6 classrooms, but just thinking about the district as a whole in terms of moving forward. And the third thing is I was very happy to have been able to participate in the community conversations.
Thank you. I just realized that I didn't thank you for coming.
Oh, no problem. It's okay. You see me all the time. Dr. Toper handled the questions very well. There were some challenging questions. A number of questions that we already know will be in terms of communication and procedures, and we're moving forward in those areas. As Chairperson Lyons talked about, we have some items for communication in our implementation steps, where we're also moving forward in terms of the procedures manual. So there's more input, more interaction with the parents in the community. So it took a long time for us to get here. It's also going to take a long time, but hopefully a short amount of time for us to turn things around.
Okay, thank you. Sherelle?
I officially thank Dr. for coming out. Also a breath of fresh air.
He was good.
Yes.
You were good.
Okay, anything else? No, okay. Then next item is approval of the minutes of August 30th. Chair would entertain a motion to approve. Mr. Simmons moves. Is there a second? Heidi seconds. Any changes or corrections? Did not see any myself.
There was just one minor one.
Mhm.
Spelling of my name was incorrect, and I forgot which page it was on.
On one of the pages?
Yeah, I have to look it up again.
Okay. Yeah. Secretary can just do a search.
Yeah.
You got the, you know, the spelling is correct on the front page, so just make sure it matches that throughout. Anything else?
That's right, header, right? It's just in one of the approvals.
You searching for it?
I noticed that too. I think it's in the very end.
They must call you, they must call you Dr.
Well, it's not like spelling Smith.
CREVEC.
It's on,
That looks right.
on the page where it says, the first line says approval to appoint Joe Rios.
Yep, yep.
In bold. It should be COEUR.
Yeah, there it is.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
Well, it's wrong there.
All right, okay, we got that? All right, all in favor of approving the minutes with that correction, please indicate. And that's unanimous. No, not yet, I'm sorry.
No, he went.
My fault. Any objections? No. Any abstentions? Yes, because Eric was not there. Thank you. All right, next item is number 8, discussion of collective bargaining personnel matters. Chair would entertain a motion to go into executive session for that purpose. Eric moves. Is there a second? Sherelle seconds. All in favor? We are in executive session, 5-minute recess.